right. So hopefully we're going. So I'm going to say hello, everybody. I'm your host, Eric Smith, and my guest today is an author, an editor, a Bram Stoker Award winner. This is My Favorite Horror with James Aquilone. Welcome, James.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, thanks for being here. I always like to put people on the spot right off the bat. So,
Okay.
uh, as a way of introducing yourself to folks, if you had to write your author bio right now, what would it say?
I guess I have to lead with the Bram Stoker Award, because I just won that like 2 weeks ago. So I was like, oh boy, that's the I didn't even care about the award. It was just like I get to now put that in the beginning of my bio. I'm Bram Stoker Award winning editor, writer, publisher. Um, I own Monstrous Books, and I guess the anthology people would know me for are classic Monsters Unleashed. Shakespeare Unleashed is coming out very soon. The Kolchak, the graphic novel, which is what I won the Bram Stoker Award for, and we got Dead Detective Society is coming out. So we're also gonna. I think I'm gonna get that done soon. So for the first time, I think I might actually get the books out to backers early. I didn't want to promise that to them, so hopefully I can surprise them and say, "Oh, I'm not late this time. I'm actually early." So Shakespeare's coming out next month, and I'm hoping that Dead Detectives will come out in time for Christmas.
Nice. Well, in your recent newsletter, you said you've used Kickstarter 5 times, I believe.
Yeah,
So you had Classic Monsters Unleashed, which I backed. I've got the shirt.
yeah,
I've got my little poster there,
very
um,
cool.
and my the art print that I chose.
I love that. Yeah.
The book is somewhere in one of these stacks. I don't remember where. But Classic Monsters Unleashed, the Kolchak, the Shakespeare Unleashed, Dead Detective Society. What's the fifth one?
Well, that was my first one. Was from my first novel, Dead Jack, the zombie detective series I do. So I did that back in 2016. So it was my first novel. There you go. You got the first, but we that wasn't that's the new cover. So when I did the Kickstarter, I had an older cover. So everything was new back then. So that started me in 2016. And the idea was that I was going to do a Kickstarter like every 6 months, every year or so, and put out a Dead Jack novel. But that didn't work out because we actually Dead Jack was more successful than I thought it would be.
Nice.
So then it ended up getting options for movie and TV like right before right after the Kickstarter. So then I figured, well, let me try to get an agent, and then I got an agent, and then the agent said, "Hey, let's try to sell this, the books to a publisher because I was self publishing it." So that just took me on this like 2-3 year odyssey of frustration, and then and then I went back to self publishing it because I did actually get a 2 book deal for Dead Jack, and but the publisher was terrible, and we ended up getting the rights back, and then the publisher just folded. So so it kind of derailed the series for a little while, and then but it's back now.
Yes. I wondered if that was the first one. I didn't back it. Obviously, I have these nice new, beautiful covers. Um, what what goes into putting together a Kickstarter campaign?
Oh boy, I mean everything because I'm doing the whole thing. So the promotion part of it is probably the most intensive because you can put as much as you want into it or as little as you want into it. So you could be doing that 24 hours a day, just promoting and promoting. Just trying to find another Facebook group that you can go and promote it in, newsletters, and working on social media. So that can really eat up your time. So that's a big part of it. Um, then of course you got to put the book together too. So that's another big project to put on. So you're building the Kickstarter itself. Building what rewards am I gonna have? How am I gonna like bundle things together? Then putting the page together, and then it's promoting that, then running the Kickstarter itself, and then putting the book together. Sometimes I'm doing it at the same time, or I'm starting to put the book together a little bit before the Kickstarter and then through it. And with Dead Detective Society, I try to be smarter about it and get most of it together before the Kickstarter. So that's why I'm thinking I can do things a little quicker this time. So I wanted all the stories in first, and I have all the stories now. So I think that's a better way of doing things, because before I was doing the Kickstarter around the same time I was also putting the book together, so it was just a little much. So it's a lot of work to do the Kickstarter, and then if it's successful, and if it's something like Kolchak where we had 2,000 backers, then the whole process of fulfillment and shipping all those books out, which is really crazy, and then going to the post office every day, weeks. That's not fun, but it's great to get the books out to everybody. And then, with Kolchak, everyone's reaction to that book was just phenomenal. So it was really satisfying that the reaction to it was just so great.
Well, do you do all of that stuff yourself, the mailing and everything? And
So I do that with my wife. She'll
excuse me.
tell you she does it all. She's really good at taping the boxes and stuff. And she, if it's taped perfectly, she did it. If it's all messed up to tape, then I probably did it. But we do that together. Yeah, it's just me and her as far as the fulfillment goes. And amazingly, we did the Kolchak fulfillment in about 6 weeks, just me and her. Yeah, 1,500 of those at least, I think. Uh, and you know what? They weren't even. I thought I was going to get people, messaging me saying like they're damaged, but we didn't get almost no one said they were damaged. Thankfully, so we did a good job, I think, packaging them and shipping them out. But that's enough. So it's a long process. It's going to be like a year of your life if you do a Kickstarter.
Oh, wow. And how do you decide, say with Dead Detective Society, um, how do you decide, I don't know, which authors to reach out to, how you're going to put that table of contents together?
With Dead Detectives, it was a little easier because I was looking for a very specific type of detective. So at first it was I have Dead Jack, my zombie detective. So obviously I was very familiar with Kevin J. Anderson's Dan Shamble and Tim Wagner's Matt Richter and the Necropolis books. So I wrote the first Dead Jack short story like way back in 2006, and I didn't do anything with it because I didn't think anybody was interested in reading anything about a zombie detective. Then when it came time, a few years later, I became more serious about submitting stories, and I said, all right, let me Google this first before I send out the zombie detective story. Maybe there are other zombie detectives, because I thought it was a very original idea I had, but I wanted to make sure that I was original, and that with something like that you might inadvertently rip somebody else off, and then people say, well, he did this and that. So I did Google it, and then I came upon Kevin J. Anderson and Tim Wagner stuff, and thank God I did, because I named my world Necropolis, and
Hmm.
Tim Wagner had already used that. So then I made some changes, and then I got it published. um so then, a few years later, I'm working with Tim Wagner. He's been in all of my projects, and I did some stuff with Kevin too. So I said that'd be really cool now to put Dead Jack in a book with Dan Shamble and Matt Richter. So originally it was going to be just zombie detectives, but it was hard finding. I wanted to at least have 13 stories, and then it was like it would seem kind of one note if we just did zombie. So I said let's expand it and let's have other like occult detective and supernatural detectives. And so then I started bringing in I started looking for other people who had those type of characters. um and I wanted to bring in some new stuff. So I wanted like half of it to be already established um characters, and then I wanted other people to create their own like the zombie detective or a supernatural detective. So then I knew John Jennings had a similar character. He had an undead detective called, I think, Frank Undead Johnson or something. So I reached out to him, but the rights to that were tied up in something else. So he showed me this other character that he had called Saul Wen, Halloween Detective, and he had these amazing sketches. And I said, Halloween Detective, that sounds awesome, and the artwork was amazing, and he had never done anything with it. He hadn't published any stories with this character. Says, all right, that's perfect, let's do that character. So that kind of, I just got lucky. David Avalone, his father did Nick Carter novels in the 60s. So I said Nick Carter is perfect because he started out as a detective. Um, so let's do a new Nick Carter story. So he did that, and that's an amazing story too. That's very so pulpy and action packed, and I love it. And then I always invite Joe Lansdale because it's Joe Lansdale, and
Yes.
he responds to my email. So I'm like, wow, okay. So I would have him in everything if I could. So that's basically how I approach a lot of it. It's like these guys who and women and whoever who I admire, and even as coming at it as a fan, saying I would love to work with this person. So I'm always amazed when they say yes.
Looks like a great lineup. I'm a huge Cal McDonald fan.
Oh, I forgot Steve Niles. Yes.
Um, I of course I first heard of Steve Niles because of 30 Days of Night
Yeah, me too.
and started checking out all his stuff and just fell in love with Cal McDonald. Absolutely love that character. And there's going to be, I mean, I think this is all on social media. I'm not telling tales. A new Sonia Blue
Sonia Blue. Yes.
story.
So Steve, obviously, we worked with him with the Kolchak graphic novel. And then I found out about Cal McDonald's. Wow, okay, that's perfect. So you got a perfect detective, and Nancy Collins was also in Kolchak, and I knew about her Sonia Blue character. And I said, you want to do like a detective type version of that character? So yeah, I think everybody in this book I've worked with before. So that worked out pretty well. And so a lot of them have these type of characters already in their bibliography. So that helped.
And then, well, with the Dead Detective Society campaign, you also decided to launch a magazine.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Are you a crazy person? I
I
guess
am crazy because I love the
question.
project, and I was always like, what else can we do? Um, yeah, I mean, I like, even if we do like a prose anthologies, like I would love to just somehow do something else with comics too. So after Kolchak was huge, but Kolchak was also really expensive, and it worked out, but it was also scary because I could have lost a lot of money on that project if it wasn't as successful as it was. So I like the idea. We did it with Shakespeare Unleashed. We had like a companion comic book, so about like a 40-page mini comic. It was like manga sized. So I said that would be cool to do a small magazine. I'm gonna do a digest size. I think it's 5.5 by 8.5 inches. Um, in a 40-page magazine. It's not, and it wouldn't cost that much to print. And I always wanted to do a Dead Jack comic, so I was like, this is a perfect excuse to do a Dead Jack comic. And then we got Nancy Collins to do this really cool classic monster story. I mean, I didn't ask her to do a classic monster. That's what she ended up coming up with, but it's really awesome. Where basically it's like every classic monster just kind of just fight. That's it. It's like a battle royale with Dracula, Frankenstein. They throw a Godzilla type character out there and King Kong. It's everything. So it's like this is amazing. So we have to have that in there. So it was just like an opportunity to do that stuff. And just offer something different. And I'm hoping that takes off on its own, and then we can do like the magazine as its own thing, like a couple of times a year.
Well, I'm really looking forward to everything that is going to come out with this Dead Detective Society. Um, I don't remember exactly which level I backed it, but I'm pretty sure it was there. There were art prints and a T-shirt and all sorts of goodies, which is always fun when that stuff comes in.
Yeah, we
Um,
got a lot of amazing art. I think with this one we really like knocked it out of the park because we got Russ Braun did the illustration for Steve Niles, which was great, and John K. Snyder, who did Johnny Fade. That's Nancy Holder and Alan Phillipson's character, he's a ghost detective. And all the art, Zach Atkins did 4 pieces, and then we got J.K. Woodward who did the Dead Jack illustration, which was amazing. So we had a lot of great artists, and I think that the Dead Detectives like really kind of lend itself to really cool art. So and every piece so far has been amazing, and we're gonna have 13 illustrations
Oh,
in the.
fantastic. I love that. Speaking of great art, I mean the your covers, I've got my ring light, try to keep the
Yeah.
reflection off it. The covers for these are just absolutely beautiful. We got that one, and then that one.
And Colton did the cover for Monstrous magazine too. So that and then that's great too. We got Dracula and Frankenstein and a Gill man on that cover, and I love that too. So Colton really does really great stuff, especially with the monsters, and he did the classic Monsters Unleashed cover too.
Oh, that. Yeah, that's again right
Yeah, I
there.
mean, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I have to have great art, or I don't I don't like to do it,
It,
yeah, unless it's like it's got to be like awesome. I want to make like beautiful books, so it's like I'm always on the lookout for like good artists, and and so hopefully they'd work with me, and so far I haven't had it too hard a time getting really great artists, and they've really done like amazing job.
well, backing the Monsters Unleashed, one of the hardest parts for me was making those choices on which print I wanted, which
Oh
t-shirt.
yeah,
The t-shirt wasn't as difficult because one of my favorite
yeah,
quotes,
that's a great t-shirt.
um, possibly my favorite quote from the book, one of
Yeah.
my favorite quotes of all time. Um,
We overdid it with the t-shirts for Classic Monsters. I think we had something like 6 t-shirts. We're like we have so now I have like I think I have probably over 10 t-shirts from all the Kickstarters. I should just
Great.
open up a t-shirt website. Yeah.
Trying to, there is a t-shirt for Dead Detective Society, right? It was in one
Yeah,
of
it's the cover.
the tiers. That's what I thought. Is
I was
that
like that cover is so amazing. I was like that we don't need to do anything with it.
okay? Just yeah, art. I have 8 Dan Shamble novels,
Oh, okay.
and those covers are absolutely amazing.
Yeah, the new ones that he did. He redid all the covers. So
Yeah,
did you back his Kickstarter too?
I was not able to back that Kickstarter, so I have to wait until whenever that ninth book comes out.
I got because he did a Dan Shamble Kolchak comic, which had been pretty hard to get, but he was offering the comic through his Kickstarter. So I ended up backing it through his Kickstarter, and then I asked him if he had 10 of the comics left over, so we can do it for Dead Detective Society. So we were able to offer 10 of the Kolchak Dan Shamble comics through the Dead Detective Society, and they went in like the first couple of hours.
Yeah, I missed out on that. I was able to back it within the first 24. Um, but yeah, I saw that a lot of stuff was just gone so quickly.
All of the sign stuff went, all that limited stuff that we had. Yeah, we had well, Steve Niles sent me a whole box of his books signed, like even well before the campaign. So he just, here you go. I think he gave me every Cal McDonald book. So that went pretty quick too, which I figured it would. So that was, I really want to make sure that we had their books too available.
Did he send you the one that's in an evidence bag?
It's not in an evidence bag.
I have it. I know it's over in that direction. Um, and I don't remember which it's a smaller one.
I do have a smaller one. It's like it's black and I think it was like white text on it. It
Possibly
was
it's been
some
a
like it
while.
was like a limited thing because I saw it online and it wasn't like available anywhere else. So I might have that.
Because I actually have copies, multiple copies ish, because I have I can't remember, of course, can't remember any of the titles. Dial M for Monster, I think is one, right?
Let me see. I might have listed. Hopefully, I listed the names.
The first one, but there was one like Stitches, something with Stitches. I don't remember, but my copy, which I ordered directly from my comic book shop, I think, came in an evidence bag.
Yeah. Okay.
Pretty cool.
That's cool.
And then recently, last year, year before, I ordered the complete Cal McDonald book because I think it has one or two new stories in it. So even though I already had most of what was in it, I wanted those new stories. So I'm that big a fan.
Yeah, that's cool stuff, and Steve has a lot of cool stuff. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. And I'm really happy that he sent me like a whole box of his book. And it's like it also hurts to like I have to give this stuff away because I would keep it.
Maybe some of it fell off the back of the
Yeah,
truck.
right. Oh, it's Kyle McDonald, Detective Tales, the black and white
Possibly.
cover.
Oh, I don't. Again, it's almost within reach if my arms were about twice as long as they are now. But um, so you're a comic fan?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What are your comic book tastes?
Now, I mean, I read a lot of horror comics now. I mean, I love Hellblazer, which is really cool. Um, I love anything Alan Moore does. Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's awesome. So I was like, Hellblazer is really. I mean, it's Alan Moore. So I mean, really got it. I mean, when I was a kid, that was the first thing I read with comic books. That's
Mhm,
all I read probably from the time I was like could read up until I was at least 12 or 13. Um, then I kind of got into comics again, like in my 20s, reading like Alan Moore stuff, and that just like blew me away. Just like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Watchmen and V for Vendetta. Um, some like League, it's just like you want to just keep, they're trying to rip that off, and you kind of want to just do that over and over again. And I love Brian K. Vaughan. I mean, the saga is really amazing. That's like one of the best series that I've ever read. And I love Why the Last Man too.
mhm.
And I got the new Creep Show was kind of cool. They had that. You see the Creep Show.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
That's cool. So yeah, so I'm hoping to do something like that too. That we're supposed to be doing like a horror anthology comic
Uh,
book series.
did you read the Hill House stuff from DC that Joe Hill curated and wrote some of it?
I think I have it, but I don't. I have so many comic books that I bought. I love buying comics, but then I just I don't get a chance to read anything. So I have like, oh man, I never read. I have to read Ronnie Barnes's Blackula because I got that, and it's like I never had a chance to read it because I'm also reading some of that stuff for the anthologies and everything. But I gotta sit down to read that too, and Philadelphia
Mhm.
too.
Well, not
Everything Ronnie does is really cool.
if we don't count the trade paperbacks or the collected editions that I have, just my floppies. I'm about 8 months behind on
Yeah,
reading the
there's so
comic.
much to get into, and there's so much cool stuff that's coming out every week. So it
Mhm,
just becomes overwhelming. So I try to get into then the Dawn of DC stuff, and I was getting the new Superman, and then you lose track of what you get, and then because I think I have like at least two of the like saga like volume 7 or something because I forget I already bought it and then I buy it again. Or you get it on pre-order like 6 months in advance on Amazon, and then you forget, you buy it, and then it shows up, on your doorstep.
well,
So
I've got a great local comic shop. Shout out to Comics Argo. Um, and they have a file system, so they have, everything that I want them to pull for me, and they pull it every week. And then I get the previews every month and send them a new order for what I want from that. So fortunately, it's a pretty good system. I don't have to worry about
yeah, I have to get more organized.
what's coming in. But
Yeah.
uh but yeah, with all the reading I do and everything else, like I said, I'm about 8 months behind on the floppies, years behind on the collected editions. Um I've got omnibus editions, those huge hardback
Yeah, yeah.
omnibus editions.
Yeah, 'cause I
Um
just got one of those for Tomb of Dracula.
I have the paperbacks for those, the complete
They were
Tomb.
really hot. Yeah, they weren't available. I was trying to get, the volume 1 of Tomb of Dracula in color,
Mhm.
and you just can't get them. anywhere. They have like volume 2 and 3. So I ended up having to get the I guess it's the essential
Yeah.
two in black and white. So I figured I'd just get that so I can read it. But I couldn't get the color version anywhere.
Let's see. I can see actually the thing that introduced me to Nancy Collins is her Swamp Thing run.
Yeah.
And I have the omnibus for that. My most recent omnibuses are I got the Marvel Planet of the Apes from the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
Nova omnibus from the 70s. And I'm actually very excited. I don't know how far back you go into comics and things. I'm very excited that Marvel is finally reprinting their original run up for Rom, the Space Knight, and Micronauts.
I have a few ROM stuff from the 80s, yeah.
I'm absolutely going to be ordering those omnibuses. Um, but yeah, the Creep Show comic was good. There was a uh, Conjuring comic that DC did that tied in with the Conjuring 3 that I thought was okay, except that it had these incredibly great fake ads,
Mm,
like the very old 60s, 70s
yeah.
kind of fake ads, but it was all for spooky stuff. And some of it tied in with the Conjuring universe.
That
So that made that comic worth reading. I mean, the story was okay, but those ads were great. I love that kind of stuff.
no, I mean I can tell you like all the comics I bought. I can't tell you all the comics I read. I think I just picked up collection of Howard the Duck. Because I really want to get into that. Because it's like, that's one of those things where it's like the movie ruined it
Ugh.
because it's a great comic, but then the movie was so bad that it ruined it. Then people, think of Howard the Duck's like crappy. But and then it's kind of along the I feel it's like kind of along like my Dead Jack stuff. It's kind of that like parody
Mhm.
stuff. So I remember, yeah, I bought a lot of comics in the last couple of months, but I haven't had a chance to read anything. I don't
This
know. I'm not gonna get a chance anytime soon.
for me, since I'm not worried about like the collectability and resaleability of things. I just want the comics. I want to be able to
I
read them.
can't read it.
This is like a golden age of reprints. I have Howard the Duck the complete collection. It's 4 or 5 volumes. I
Yeah, they
have.
reprinted a lot of stuff. I got the re they did a reprint of Adam Warlock, which was cool.
Mhm.
And I got the reprints of they did it just in a reprint of like Action Comics 1 and um Detective Comics, what 38 or whatever, the first appearance of Batman. So I like that stuff because it's really cool when they do the reprint, like if and then you see the ads, and they were bizarre, the ads in comic books, which I didn't realize as a kid. It's all very like manipulative, where they were trying to like,
Yeah.
you can get, it was always like send in to, so you can be an artist, or you could. It was always about trying to get people. It seemed like everybody who's getting comics was out of work and was trying to make a quick buck. So it was always like send in for this was whatever, and you could be a draftsman, or you could be, and
If you if you can draw this turtle,
yeah, yeah. The one that ever worked out for anybody. Yeah, and then it was like the Atlas ads, like how you could go from a 90-pound weakling to Arnold
yep.
Schwarzenegger or whoever. But yeah, it was kind of like if you just reading the ads, it kind of tells the story of like or what they thought, was the comic book buying audience. And it's
Yeah.
like so it's like it's not a good picture of what they thought, those you know, they were all like out of work, 90-pound weaklings.
Getting sand kicked in their face.
Yeah, but it was like I was an 8-year-old kid, at that time buying that stuff. So I wasn't interested. Well, then they try to hit you up as a kid to sell Grit magazine. That was like which I think was like a scam. I might have done that at one point or something. I think it was something like you get like a greeting cards and you try to sell greeting cards to your family and stuff, and then you can get get a bike or something.
Didn't they have the you could sell seeds?
I think so. And we also had the sea monkeys that they were always trying to say, which were just like seeds or something, like shrimp or something, right? Like the
Yeah, little
dehydrated.
prawns or something weird.
Yeah, they showed the picture of like this whole like underworld world that all these seahorses were like they had crowns on as like a king and queen and you know so yeah they were really kind of like trying to like pull one over on you as a kid and I think I remember because I was also into baseball cards so I remember sending money to get some I think catfish hunter cards and they never came.
Oh,
I'm still waiting for them.
trying to think of the kind of things I sent away for. I don't know that I sent away for anything from a comic book. I remember sending away for things from cereal. I
Oh, okay.
actually I had a I sent away and received it was a cockpit of the Viper from Battlestar Galactica.
Okay.
And of course it was just a big cardboard thing
Yeah.
that you just
Yeah.
put on the floor and you sat in it, the three sides of it. I remember sending away for that. I can't remember anything else I might have sent away for.
I would buy I always buy like the comic book buying guides,
Mm-hmm.
like check the prices because in the 80s then that was a really big thing where comic books and baseball cards was then how much they were supposedly worth. So I would get all the guides for the baseball cards. And I used to be so good at that. I could tell you like, oh, if it was a Nolan Ryan 1974 card, I can tell you at the time like how much it was worth and stuff. Because I was really into and I had this whole, I still have my baseball card collection and it's worth nothing now.
If I still had everything that I had as a kid, the comics, the I didn't do sports cards, but I had all the original Star Wars cards,
Oh yeah, yeah.
all the old Star Wars stuff. If I still had all that stuff and could sell it for what the internet says they go for, I could
Oh man.
retire.
Well, the baseball card stuff didn't really hold its value, but the comics have because they have real worth. Baseball cards don't have any real worth, and they really destroyed that industry, in the 90s. But yeah, I mean, if I had kept all my GI Joe stuff, I gave all that away. I had the original Transformers. I had like Starscream and all that cool. I mean, that was like the coolest toy ever and then like the die cast
Yeah.
Transformer stuff. And it was like big and heavy, and I gave that away. Well, I mean, if you had them in the original box, I saw something on YouTube, and I don't know what it was, but some guy found he had all the original Transformer stuff in the boxes, and that's worth a lot of money.
Yeah. But I had the 12-inch GI Joes and I had a ton of the Mego figures. But I was a kid. We played with them.
Played with them. There was no concept of keeping it in the box, you know.
We beat the shit out of those things.
Yeah, yeah. I had the Ewok Village. I remember that was a really big toy for me. I got it for Easter one year. I
I had a big
saw that at a con. They were selling it. I think they were selling it for like $100, but it was out of the box.
I had a big 3-foot Shogun Warrior.
Oh, I think I had one of those like in the late 70s. Yeah, that was cool when they came out with like the Godzilla one, like and they would shoot out like missiles and stuff. Yeah. Those are the best toys for like the late 70s, like early 80s. And all that stuff was like really just coming out like for the first time.
Love that stuff. All right. So Dead Jack. I want to talk a little bit about Dead Jack here. I just recently read the first one,
Oh yeah.
and actually my review for it is going up tomorrow
Uh-oh.
as of this recording, folks. You people out there. Um, so I've always been a fan of mysteries and detective stories, more specifically, Philip Marlowe, Sam Spade, up to Spencer and Elvis Cole and all of that kind of stuff. And I also like mashing genres together. So, of course, I love horror detectives or paranormal detectives or whatever anybody wants to call it. And I'll tell you, in my review, I say, I don't know if this is actually accurate, in my experience, most private eye books start one of two ways. Either the detective is just finishing up a case and then goes home or back to the office, and then the case that's going to be the whole story comes to him, or it just starts with him in his office. Someone walks in the door and he gets the case. And one of the things I liked about Dead Jack and the Pandemonium Device is that's not how it starts at all. It's a quarter of the way, or not 2/3, a quarter or a third of the way through before he actually even has a case, and that's just to find 52 cats.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I like the way you introduced him and built the world before we get to an actual case that he's doing. Plus, I love, where is it? The fact that there's a map. There aren't
Yeah,
enough maps in
Matt.
books.
But it's based on New York City, so it was like, oh, that'd be cool to kind of rename everything and say how you know, this part of Brooklyn is well, I left Coney Island. Coney Island's still Coney Island.
I was gonna say,
Well, I'm originally from Brooklyn, and then now I'm in Staten Island. So I really like that idea of kind of doing this like alternative New York City from like that's kind of like the 1940s, but like kind of like the 1940s, like in hell, filled with monsters.
well, I love Oswald. Jack treats him horribly. So,
Yes,
although we do get to see a bit of that soft side that he cares for him at the end of this. I like that you have that short story at the end, and then that you have Oswald's mission report that fills in part of that short story.
hmm
Was that in the original version of this?
No, so I said before I wrote the first Dead Jack story in like 2006. Um, and I had originally that, yeah, the Jack is incapacitated at one point, so then Oswald had to go and retrieve something. And I always loved it's really from Inspector Gadget. I love Inspector Gadget. And I love the fact that Inspector Gadget, he's supposedly the protagonist. He's supposedly the hero, but it's Penny who
Mhm.
always solves the crime, and he's a bumbler. So I always like that idea because I always kind of am very suspicious of heroes. I don't feel like, you know, to me, like that perfect hero doesn't really exist, that who always, saves the day and he's perfect. So I like to play with that. So I always like that idea of this person who they think is the hero, but they're really not the hero. And it's the other person who never gets the credit. And the other guy, for some reason, always gets the credit because he's the guy. Um, I guess Remington Steele was kind of like that too, right? So I like that idea. And so the story, I did include that. So I wanted this whole part, like, oh, and the whole style of it changes. Then it becomes like more like a James Bond thing. And Oswald is talking like, in military speak and everything. So it just changes everything. But I had taken my very first writing class, like well into my 30s, and I didn't even need to. I took like a fiction one class just because I felt kind of like I never took a fiction writing class in college. I always stayed away from that. So I was like, let me see if there's anything there and even get some feedback on my story. So we had to submit two stories for critique. And I submitted a story in the beginning of the class. Um, and then I had the second story and I was writing the story and I wasn't able to finish it on time. So I just had this Dead Jack story, and I said, I guess I'll just throw this out there because the deadline was that night. But it would only whatever the portal was that I had to submit it to would only take a story to up to 5,000 words, and it was like 6,000 words, so I had to cut it, and I had like a half hour I think to do this before I missed the deadline. So I just took out that whole section with Oswald. So then I just made it. That would be funny too. That like Jack just sends him out, and then the next section he returns and he's like, all right, I did it. So I took that whole section out, and it was very well received. Then this story, and even the teacher was like, "This is really great. This would be a great series. I would buy this." So I said, "All right." so I left that out, and because it also was kind of a little weird that the whole, that section is completely different and from a different, viewpoint. It's a whole different story. So I left that out, and then when it was published, it ended up being published in Weird Tales in 2014. That story, um, I always left it out, and so I said it'd be cool now if now that I have the book, and also to fill some space, it'd be cool like maybe if I just threw this out there so people can see, this missing chapter. And everyone ended up really liking Oswald, and for a lot of people, I think that's their favorite character.
Yeah, so far he's right up there for me. I still have two more books to read. And then of course the new whatever new stuff you have for us in Dead Detective Society and the magazine. And it's just Monstrous Magazine.
Yeah, Monstrous.
What's going to be called? I noticed you've got a Monstrous t-shirt on.
Yeah, I got a Monstrous Books t-shirt.
Monstrous Books. What made you decide to create Monstrous Books?
Well, I did the first Kickstarter Class Monster. It was really successful, and I was working with a publisher, and I still work with them. We're Crystal Lake. But it's still like the burden of like raising the money was on me, and it's still a lot of work. And so figuring, I'm basically working as a publisher for all of this anyway. So it would make sense just to start my own publishing company and at least be able to control the book then, and keep the rights too. So like a year after the Class of Monsters, then I just started my own publishing company, and then just gave me more room to do more projects and more stuff. And if I was doing all the work anyway, I might as well keep the rights, right? So that made sense. And so yeah, so then it was like Shakespeare was really the first book on the Monsters, although Crystal Lake will handle the ebook, but Dead Detective is the first one and fully under Monstrous Books.
Very nice. All right. Anything else before we get into sort of the main feature part of this that you want to tell people, talk about?
I think we covered everything. We covered the magazine, we covered Monsters Books, and Dead Jack. Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's dive into this part. Um, so you picked your choice, your second choice, technically, for this episode is the remake, the 2004 remake. Hopefully, we're talking about the same thing.
Mhm.
Dawn of the
Yeah.
Dead.
As-
All right. Before we get into this, I've 2.5 questions. First of all, slow zombies or fast zombies?
uh that's a really good. I know it's at StokerCon, and it was kind of controversial because it was on a couple of panels, and we were talking about the fast zombies, and a lot of people were like, no, they're not zombies, So I don't have any problem with fast zombies. I think for me as a writer, if I'm writing a zombie story, I'm probably writing a Romero slow zombie. Um, but I do like the fast zombies in movies. I think it's more it lends itself more to action, and it's a little more exciting.
Mhm. Well, that sort of leads right into the second question, which is the infected in 28 days later. Are they zombies?
Well, I don't. They're not technically dead, right? So they're just
Right.
infected. So I don't. Yeah, I mean that's a whole podcast we can do on what a zombie is, and which we probably should do because again, this was coming up in StokeCon, is becoming a thing, and then I started really thinking about this a lot of the last since StokeCon, and I've actually watched now like 5 zombie movies. So yeah, I mean, I to me, I don't care what you call them, So I mean, because the thing is, the zombies that the name comes from the voodoo, Haiti,
Hmm.
and those were zombies. Then Romero comes out with his creatures in 1968, but they weren't called zombies in Night of the Living Dead. He calls them ghouls, and he wasn't in any way connecting those creatures in his movie to Haitian zombies at all. He wasn't even like, trying to like riff off of that. If anything, he was He was inspired by I Am Legend and the Vincent Price version of that, The Last Man on Earth. Um, and they were really just wanted to do like a low budget horror movie that just featured like The Walking Dead, who with that ate people. So they were really into like cannibal, revenants, really, which is really a new thing because your voodoo zombies, they don't eat flesh. Um, they're not revived by anything like an infection or I guess in I Am Legend, they don't really tell you really what happens, but it's some kind of it's much more like comes out of nature, or it's more of a science fiction thing than magic. So to
Right.
me, like those are two totally different creatures, the voodoo zombie and the Romero zombie. And truthfully, we shouldn't even be calling them zombies. I don't think the Romero so there's a lot of then confusion then why we're calling them zombies. So he calls them ghouls in the first movie, and then like fans and I think film critics started just calling them zombies because they didn't have any real name, or there wasn't like a cool name for that type of character. Even though it's been around, you found them in like EC comics, like Tales from the Crypt. You had like guy dies, he comes back, and he usually tries to get revenge. But I don't think he necessarily ate anybody. But
Mhm.
the idea of like a corpse like being reanimated and getting revenge, that's super old. That goes back. It's like probably like the first monster ever. But there was never like a name. I mean, they
Right.
called it evidence, but people never, that it's not as cool as zombie. So it's not until Dawn of the Dead, the originals, 1978, that then George Romero just takes it because everyone else was calling them zombies. So he called them zombies. And I think they mentioned zombie like maybe once or twice in the movie, but I think in the script he writes them as zombies. And then it becomes all these things are called zombies.
Right.
But even like in recent, like Walking Dead, they don't call them zombies. So I think people are trying to get away from that, as a title because it is confusing,
Mhm.
and it kind of should stay with the voodoo uh version of it, I think. So I don't care then if it's something like the 28 Days Later zombie, or the new Dawn of the Dead zombie. Um, so I'm fine with that. So because it's not that it's a new creature. So to me that it gets all confusing and jumbled up as far as zombies. So now we have like all these different versions of zombies, and then it's not a zombie, so I'm fine with that. And I don't know if did 28 Days Later, did they market themselves as a zombie movie?
I don't I don't remember um what the marketing was. I do know I for the longest time vehemently was on the side of they are not zombies. They have not died and come back to life. You don't have to shoot them in the head. If you shoot them in the heart or cut off a limb, they'll bleed to death, just like a person, a normal
Yeah,
person.
because
But
even the voodoo and the Romero zombie, that's the only thing they have in common is that they are dead or
mhm.
undead. That's the only thing they really have in common. So if you want to go by that, then all zombies should at the very least, be undead.
Well, some people have argued that the rage virus makes them mindless, and so therefore they're zombie adjacent at least.
Yeah,
So I've I've harnessed my pulled back a little of my rage when people call them zombies. Um,
but
but
Romero invented that too with the crazies.
yeah,
The crazies, there was like it's very similar, and they were fast moving, and but they weren't dead, so it was like kind of coming fire. So it still goes back to Romero anyway.
well, yeah, and as you said, we could do a whole podcast just about zombie stuff. Return of the Living Dead.
Yes, and
They
I
were
just
quite
watched that
mobile
too.
and they could talk
They could talk, and that's when you first get the idea that supposedly they want brains, they want to eat brains, which
because
was
of
not was
pain.
not a, it wasn't a thing before that. But that's written by Joe Russo, who co-wrote Night of the Living Dead. So which I didn't know, but that so Joe Russo he supposedly was the one who really came up with the idea the initial idea anyway for Night of the Living Dead. So it was his idea to have these ghouls who come back from the dead and want to eat people. So it was his idea supposedly. So then I guess there was some rift between him and Romero after Night of the Living Dead. So like they broke up. But Russo, he had the rights to make a movie then called Of the Dead,
Hmm.
and where of the Living Dead. I'm sorry. That's why you have Night of the Living Dead. But then when George Romero does his next movie, it's called Dawn of the Dead and not Dawn of the Living Dead. So Russo had the rights. So then he wrote Return of the Living Dead. So he can do Living Dead stories, and Romero can only do Dead, uh, of the Dead. So it's kind of a sequel, Return of the Living Dead, to Night of the Living Dead. So I think he kind of wanted to change things too to kind of differentiate it from Night of the Living Dead.
Well, either way, they're all great movies. But
Yeah, that's the thing. If it's a great movie, it's a great. I mean, 28 Days Later and the Dawn of the Dead remake, they got scarier. I mean, it's a lot. It would be a lot harder to um to survive in that world when the zombies are fast. And as you see, like it's so like the Dawn of the remake, it's so frenetic and it's so intense, and they're on the run. With Romero, you can kind of catch your breath and hole up in a mall or in a farmhouse. But in the remake, like they can't even be out. And once they get out, like outside of the mall, it's just like chaos, and it's like, where the hell would you go? You can't outrun them, and even when they're driving, they're like running behind them. So it's it. If you did have those fast zombies, and you had them in World War Z too, um, yeah, they would overrun the world like much faster, and it would be much more devastating.
all right, well let's dig into this one. And folks, this movie is almost 20 years old.
Yeah, I can believe that.
So but we're going to break it down. We're going to be talking about whatever we want to talk about. So there's going to be spoilers. If you haven't seen this, pause this video that you're watching right now. Go watch this. It's only about an hour and a half long, and then come back and watch us talk about it. Because we're going to dig in. So first of all, can you give, just in case there's anybody still watching who's never seen it, can you give just a quick synopsis of what this movie is about?
Well, I guess it's an infection, right? That just starts spreading across the world, and these fast zombies show up, and I mean, bang, right off the bat, it's like 5 minutes in, and
Yeah.
the first zombie shows up, and then it scares from there. So then it's just a survival. I mean, then they hold up in the mall for a while, and then they try to survive there, and then they decide like we have to get out of here and go somewhere else. But yeah, it's pretty simple, and they don't really go into how the virus started or anything like that. It's just like, this is already like several decades into the whole zombie genre, so I don't think it needs too much setup. So it's like, oh, there's a virus, these people are coming back from the dead, and they just want to eat flesh. So that's all we really need to know.
Okay. And why was this your second choice for something to talk about? Why did you
Um,
pick this one?
well, I'd always stayed away from zombie movies since I was a kid because they really scared the hell out of me. And I think of any monster like that was the one that really, really got to me. So I avoided it when I was a kid. I don't know how old I was, maybe like 6 or 7. If remember Chilla Theater
Hmm?
that used to be on, I don't know, where are you from, the East Coast?
I'm in Ohio.
Did you get, so was it, I don't know, it was on like our Channel 11, WPIX, Chilla Theater. And I think it was like maybe Friday night or Saturday night. It was like a monster movie.
Hmm?
And one night they were playing this movie called Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things,
Yes. Bob Clark.
which is a zombie movie, early zombie movie. Like it's like 1972, I think, or 73. Um, and I remember watching this movie and it's scaring the hell out of me. And then I remember watching the last scene underneath the dining room table, and in the end, it takes place on an island, and the dead rise up on this island, and they attack these people who are on the island. But at the end, all the zombies get on a boat and leave the island.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to somebody who was in the house, like, "Where are they going?" And of course, they say, "Oh, they're coming here." So for I was just like, "Oh my God!" I remember this as being like terrified and like looking out the window, waiting. I was waiting for them to show up.
Yes.
Thankfully, they never showed up. So I think that really terrified me. And I definitely stayed away from zombie movies for a long time. But I was always like kind of interested in zombie stuff. So then when I saw Dawn of the Dead was coming out, and I was seeing like the trailers for that, I was like, this looks really amazing. And it was like so different and new from the zombie movies before it, because they'd always been like very low budget, very kind of cheap movies. Even Romero stuff, they had very little budget, but this looked really like cool. So then I finally gave it up. I was like, all right, I know it's a zombie movie, but I guess I'll go see it. So we saw it, and I was like, oh, blown away. I was like, this is really awesome. And then I saw it 28 days later. But that, although I came out earlier, I saw that too in the theater. And it's the same year as Shaun of the Dead came out. So it was like zombie renaissance there in like the early 2000s. You had like three like the best zombie movies, even if they're not zombie movies, whatever, that came out. So it really rekindled my like, well, it kind of even started my love of zombies then. So then I really got into zombies with that. So like yeah, so it was like 2 or 3 years later. Then I wrote a totally different zombie thing, zombie detective. So yeah, that really then got me back into zombies, or away from my fear of zombies, then into my love of zombies.
Well, I got to see this in the theater, and I spent today, most of today, I rewatched the movie, and then I was watching all the behind the scenes stuff and listening to the director commentary. And one of the things that just sort of struck me, even though it's the kind of thing that I've always known, but it just sort of hit me as I was watching this is, of course, it's directed by Zack Snyder.
Yep.
The screenplay is from James Gunn.
Right.
And right now you've got essentially Zack Snyder's DCEU, the Snyderverse, going to the wayside, and James Gunn recreating the DC cinematic universe. So I wonder if they're still
That's
friends.
kind of weird. I don't know. Not of the Justice League, no, be cool now because you had Marvel zombies, but then DC did their zombie thing. Was it
Deceased.
DC's, which I just got too. I got that a little while ago, which is kind of cool. So maybe you can bring these like Zack Snyder back, and then they can do the DC zombie thing, which would be pretty cool, actually, you know. And I
Um,
can Zack Snyder do, and because that it probably is Zack Snyder's best movie, Dawn of the Dead.
well, I might court some angry comments. I am not a Zack Snyder fan overall. I love this movie.
Either overall, but this movie, yeah,
I absolutely love this movie, and I was watching very closely today to see if he did that his signature thing that absolutely drives me crazy, which is the ramping up and down of the slow motion to fast
oh
that he
yeah,
overuses, in my opinion, in so many movies, and he does not do it at all in here.
no, no, no,
There's a couple little shots there in slow mo, but it's normal slow mo, the kind of thing you'd see in pretty much any movie where they want to just add a little bit to the drama, but it doesn't have that ramping up and down. I'm generally not a fan of his stuff, but love this movie. Um,
I mean, maybe I give James Gunn more credit. James Gunn does great stuff, and he's a great writer. I guess after this, he also then he did Slither,
Slither's fantastic. I love it.
another great movie, and that he directed. I don't know if that's his first thing he directed. But he
I
directed
believe
that too, so that was fantastic.
at the very least, I think it's his first feature length
He like
film.
made he was doing that stuff with Trauma.
Mhm. Well, I looked at their credits on IMDb, and Romeo and Juliet is James Gunn's first writing credit,
Yeah, right. Yeah. And
which
then
is
he did,
fantastic.
because he wrote the Scooby-Doo movie, like
Mhm.
right before Dawn of the Dead, which is why a lot of people are like, why are you getting the Scooby-Doo guy to do this zombie movie? But little do they know, like he's like a genius and one of the best screenwriters out there.
And
So
Dawn
it
of
was
the
a good
Dead
team
is
up. Yeah,
Zack Snyder's first feature length.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So it was like the beginning of their careers. Um, so it's worked out. It was a good team up. I don't think we will get to see them do work again. I don't even know what Zack Snyder's doing. Well, he
Uh,
did do that Army of the Dead.
he is doing a two-part science fiction
Right, right. The
version
Star Wars.
of, basically, I say it's a version of the Seven Samurai. I can't remember the name of it.
Was it the thing he was supposed to do a Star Wars movie and then they or is that somebody else? It's called Rebel Moon.
Could be. And maybe he turned that into this thing, because I think this has Moon in the title. I
Yeah.
first heard about it because the author V. Castro is writing the novelization of it. I'm a huge fan of
Oh, okay. Yeah,
her.
yeah, yeah. It's coming out. It's coming out this year, I think.
The
Yeah, so he was supposed to do a Star Wars movie, and then it got junked. So then he just took it, and they say he filed off the serial numbers, and then
Yeah,
I mean when you just hear the title Rebel Moon, you think Star Wars anyway. But yeah, that's the next thing he's doing.
yeah. Um, but this this starts off with a bang, Dawn of the Dead, and yeah, it's only a couple of minutes in, a few minutes in, before we see the
Yeah, like
first
5 minutes.
zombie,
Yeah,
which is
they don't. Yeah, it's right away, bang, which I think you need to do. I mean, like I said, you already kind of are familiar with the zombies genre, so you don't need to really drag it out. Let's just get going, you
yeah,
know. And we don't need too much explanation, which is good because when you already are well established in a genre like this, you don't really want to explain too much about where the like who cares. There's a virus. Like, where does it come from? They don't even talk about that. And truth, if you're going to follow just a group of people and they're not in the know,
right.
and they're not going to know. I mean, even in The Walking Dead, they don't they try to find out. I don't know. I mean, I stopped watching it like in the sixth season,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, if you were just following some regular person and when this stuff, this thing would start, it would just be very confusing. And but like the original Dawn of the Dead, they start getting information from watching the television and the radio with that when and in the remake they find out from Tom Savini,
yes.
who I think he's a cop or something, interviewing him, and they shoot him in the head.
He's basically the sheriff from Night of the Living Dead.
Right, and yeah, he's saying the same thing. So and
Um,
then and Savini's the one in the original who basically causes all the trouble
yes.
because they basically live. See, this is my problem with the original. They're they're living in the mall. It's only four characters there, and two of them are from a SWAT team member, so they know what they're doing. And they have the weapons. They have a helicopter, so they're able to reach the mall pretty easily. They come in from the top. They find like this like isolated area of the mall. It's very safe and it's secure. Um, and they are pretty much going through the mall without really any incident, and they're getting what they need, and they decide, hey, things are pretty good in the mall, let's just stay here. And then they end up securing the mall and trying to clean it up from the zombies, and they're living in the mall. They have a pretty good thing there. And I watched the director's cut, so it's over 2 hours. So to me it was a little boring. It never feels like there's any threat to them, and these are the slow shambling zombies too, so they don't really feel like really scary. So they needed something to kind of get them out of there. And it was like every season of The Walking Dead, they find some place that seems safe and things are going good, and then some other group comes in and drives them out. And that's what happens in the original. This like this gang of I guess they're like bikers, like led by Tom Savini,
Mhm.
and then they come and they see that these people are living in the mall, so they raid the mall and they open it up and the zombies get back in, and then they, the original group then has to flee. So I thought that was cool, other than that they brought Savini back for the remake.
Um, well, I've always felt in these zombie movies that the problems always come from human error,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better way to put it. And if we're talking about the original Dawn of the Dead, you have the scene where um they're getting the semi trucks to put in front of the doors.
Right,
And one guy is jumping. They've got one guy driving one truck, another guy jumps into a truck. They're going to go drive that in front of the doors. Then he jumps in the truck with the first guy, drives him back to where all the trucks are. But he's got a satchel with him, and everything's going fine until he drops that satchel and has to jump down onto the ground to get it. And that's when he gets bit.
right,
And
yeah,
then they're giving flying lessons to the only woman that's there. And it's seeing the helicopter during her flying lessons that alerts the motorcycle gang that they're at the mall.
right.
But it's always something the humans are doing that basically causes their own downfall.
Yeah, and that was like again a really big part of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
But then it became a part in The Walking Dead where it was like the zombies were more of like a nuisance, and it was obviously it was more about all those other factions of survivors who were
Mhm.
causing all the trouble. So if it wasn't for them, you could probably survive, okay, in the zombie apocalypse. But that's the one good thing I did love about The Walking Dead, because that was much more realistic and of what would happen. And in a TV series, you get to explore a lot more um, about what's going on. And that's what one of the problems I think with Dawn of the Dead remake is that it's too short. And that I watched the director's cut of that too, and that's only 150 minutes. So I guess the original was like 100, I think it goes an hour and 40 minutes. But it's very, action. It's much more of an action movie even than a horror movie.
Hour and
So
41 minutes.
yeah. So it's like very intense.
Mhm.
But what I liked about it is that it starts off very well with like the character development and giving each person like a character arc. But then like in the middle of the movie, it kind of forgets the characters and it stops developing them. And then especially in like the second half of the movie, it's just action. Especially that last, the last act, it's just very
Right.
intense action. And then we don't really get to explore the characters. But that's a problem really with a movie. You just don't have that time, especially now that we see all these great TV shows that are doing these great serialized seasons. And so I think Dawn of the Dead would have been really, if they could explore that, they could explore the characters a little bit more, and they had done it like as an 8 or 10 episode season, it would have been a little probably a little cooler. And I would have liked to see them explore the characters. They have a really great cast. Ving Rhames is awesome
Mhm.
in there, and Tara Polly, and then the dad from Modern Family.
Ty Burrell, yeah.
Which is like, I always that's where I first saw him, and it's like, oh, he's such an asshole. So then I remember when he shows up in Modern Family, I was like, oh, that guy, the asshole from Dawn of the Dead. And it was like at first I couldn't believe him as Phil Dunphy, who's a completely different character. So I mean, he was awesome in that. So it was a really good cast, and the writing was good, but it's just not going to have the time in a 2 hour or a little less movie to really get into that character development. And I think that's one of the criticisms of the Dawn of the Dead remake.
See, I do think that at least some of the characters have an arc, at least a little bit of an arc, especially CJ,
Yeah,
the head security guard,
yeah, I
who
really like that.
when we're introduced to him, he comes off as kind of an asshole,
Yeah,
but
he's
I
definitely an asshole.
completely see his point of view. But and then of course by the end he sacrifices himself for the group.
Yeah,
So
so you have a
you
lot
have
of those things because I think it's a really about, the original movie I think was more focused on the social commentary and about consumerism, and that's why we have them in the mall. And I think, the remake was much more of an action film, but it was also about survival, and it was about showing how all these different people react, if you were in that situation. So I love that, like the CJ guy, he starts off with, yeah, he's like power mad, you know, um, mall security cop. And then he turns into the hero at the end. And Ty Burrell, which I forget his name in the movie, but he starts out as an asshole and he ends
yeah,
as an asshole. So you
yes he
you
does.
can see both sides of it, you know. But I love the guy. What's he? I think his name's Michael, right? So he's like the guy who he kind of in the beginning he kind of became like the leader, and then the
Right.
guy's like, "Why are we listening to you? Who are you?" And he's like, "Oh, I sell TVs at Best Buy," which is funny because that's what Simon Pegg's character does in
Mhm.
Shaun of the Dead. He also is like he works in an electronics store. I don't know if that was just a coincidence, but I love that idea was just that like he's just some normal dude, but then he steps up,
Yeah.
in the zombie apocalypse. And then we also get that in like Walking Dead, where I think we find out Negan is just like he was just a gym teacher or something, and then he's now in the he's Negan.
Yeah.
So I mean, it doesn't matter what you were before. So
Yeah.
and that was one of the first times you see that, and you didn't see that in like the original Night of the Living Dead or the original Dawn of the Dead. So I'd like that they did play more with the characters than in the original.
There's so many great little things in this movie. And going back to the beginning, the first again 5, 6, 7 minutes, can't say exactly when it happens. I think it's around 7 minutes, has the most painful thing to me in the entire movie. In a lot of movies, but when Sarah Polly's character falls into that bathtub, that hurts me to see. And the thing is, it's because like I've never been shot in the head or had my limbs cut off with a chainsaw, but I've
Right.
slipped in a bathtub. And again, watching the commentary, that was all just a stunt woman
Okay.
threw herself into the bathtub. But that's a great scene. She has to get away from her husband who's been bitten by the little girl. And the over there's so many just wonderful little moments. I think that overhead shot when she's driving and you see the T intersection
Right.
and that van's coming, and then there's a car and a van, whichever one, but that just T-bones out of nowhere and then slams it into the gas pump and the gas pump blows up.
Right.
Just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that scene when she then, is driving out, and then you see all the other stuff happening, but all like in
Oh
the
yeah.
background. But then it just gives you this idea of all this chaos, and it's told so quickly. So they get into the story real fast, and there's like no like bullshit. It's like we just get into it, and then we see all the craziness, and then we're very soon into the mall. So they was very like economical how they told the story and got and set it all up. And then they had that great like the title sequence of like the
Right.
news reports and stuff that over the like the Johnny Cash song,
Mhm.
which is very cool.
Oh, and I love the little bit where her husband is chasing her. She's in the car. We see her husband. We're looking through the windshield, through the back. Her husband's chasing, and then he just veers off, and you see that there's a woman
Yeah,
on
like he doesn't even care about her. He just sees some other,
fresh meat.
fresh meat, and he goes after that.
It's those little things that really work for me.
Yeah, that's what it is. There's so many things that like stuck with me, and like so when I think of zombie movies, I really kind of think of that because I think it was like really the time, like the first time like there's like a fully realized zombie movie because like I said, the other movies were all very low budget, and they really had to they couldn't show a lot. I mean, the original Dawn of the Dead, they kind of didn't do much with the makeup. I mean, there were some zombies who were kind of like fully realized, but a lot of them would just had like the blue gray makeup.
Mhm.
That was it, and that was they were a zombie, and I hated that makeup. And then every now and then you would see somebody with like some scars or flesh coming up, but most for the most part they just colored their faces, and they was like, that's it, zombie. So it wasn't until I mean, and then I mean the zombies in Return of the Living Dead, like that the one that says brains,
Mhm.
uh, he looked badass. See, that looked like a really cool
Tom.
zombie. Yeah, the top man, yeah. And then, but in Dawn of the Dead, everybody looks sick. I mean, and I don't think you really saw that until that time, or even like 28 days later, like because now they had budgets, you know. So it was kind of like, the zombie movie was kind of, you know, was leveled up into like the big budget action film, and they, especially Return of the Living Dead, it's very kind of very low budget. Um, but with Dawn of the Dead, finally we see like this big budget action movie made by, like a really great filmmaker. Not that George Romero was a great filmmaker, but I'm saying like then they really kind of put it together where we hadn't seen anything like that. And then we started seeing things like World War Z and stuff, But the zombie movies would then put it into a different category that we hadn't seen before.
Well, the makeup effects guy in one of the special features talked about that they had medical books and things as reference the entire time, and they wanted to make it look as realistic as possible. With the way the dead flesh looked and the wounds looked and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
because you saw that in like Walking Dead too. The great makeup
mhm.
like Walking Dead, and they didn't spare any expense. Like every zombie in the background had, the makeup, and they had all the appliances on and stuff. And it's like the cantina scene in Star Wars. And then they just threw some guys in there who had like a werewolf mask on or something. Which, then years later pissed off George Lucas because he wanted to go back and put in all the effects too in for the original Star Wars, because they didn't have, even though that was I mean, at the time it was a big budget, but didn't have the budget that George Lucas would have wanted. And there was like, even in like, I remember like the Planet of the Apes, you would have some of the like the bigger scenes where and then you could just see the apes in the back, but they just didn't, they
Right.
didn't like, you can see the eyes behind the mask. They didn't even like, put black paint or anything around it. And so like for things like that, there was always like cutting corners, but you don't see that as much. I mean, now they can also just fill that in with CGI too, and they can fill out those big crowd scenes. But if you remember the original Dawn of the Dead, there aren't that many zombies outside the mall.
Yeah.
Like a few dozen, and then you never get like see like those big groups. Then in the Dawn of the Dead, especially toward the end, it's just thousands and thousands of zombies out there. And I
So
think
many that they can't drive a bus with a plow on the front of it
right, yeah,
through them.
yeah, and they're fast moving, and there's thousands of them, and it's just like a sea of them. And then they did that too in World War Z, where it was just kind of ridiculous. So then it was like a lot of CGI, and it was just the zombies, just like it was just like a colony of ants, just moving. So from that aspect, you can just you can get more into like into the makeup, and like even in the background you can see. And but the earlier ones, you can tell there were just a lot of corners cut.
Yeah.
But that's why Night of the Living Dead, they kind of just focused on just that the farmhouse, and they didn't need to really go and expand it. And that's why I think it worked so well, because they didn't try to do something huge, and it was just very specific. It was just
Yeah.
this little group of people, that just this farmhouse, and it all helps. So that was in the dark, and the original Dawn of the Dead, it was mostly like in the day. It was brightly lit, which I didn't like either. But now I'm like crapping all over the original. I mean, I think the original's Dawn of the Dead, it's a great movie, but there are things about it that I didn't like.
The basically, again, for anybody who possibly doesn't know, the only real connection between the original and the remake is that it's people in a mall.
Yeah, basically,
It
yeah.
it does not hit for the most part, the remake doesn't hit any of the beats of the original. Um, it's
Yeah, I
just
mean, they take some things and they kind of like because the woman in the original is pregnant, but she's still pregnant when at the end of the movie.
right.
But that's a little thing that they took in the remake. So they have someone who's like about 9 months pregnant in the beginning, and then they take it further by then showing you her giving birth, after she dies, and then we get the zombie baby,
Yeah,
which is another great one. Which is, so and then they had that kind of montage scene too, I think, in the original where they're kind of going around the mall and trying on funny hats and coats and stuff, and we get that in the
yeah,
in the
we do have that.
we
Um,
always do the montage scene.
which that montage scene is what introduced me to Richard Cheese, the and Lounge Against the Machine, the great musicians.
Right, yeah.
Um, and but um, what was it? Oh, one of the things I do wish this had, at least for me, unless I missed something, I wished for a more clear-cut timeline, or basically how long are they at that mall?
Yeah, because that was the thing I was too. It was like it seemed like they were there for a while, but then it seemed like maybe not. Um, well, the other cool thing too, and we'll get into that, but you got Andy, who's in the gun shop across the way from them, which I think was a cool thing, and I loved like the relationship between him and Ving Rhames. But then at that point, like he's like, I'm hungry, so I would figure that he didn't have that much food in the gun shop, so it couldn't have been months, right? So it feels like it would have been maybe even just days or weeks. Um, that,
Thing, because well, I guess if we knew exactly how pregnant Luna was when they first introduced her,
yeah,
that would kind of give us an idea. And but it does seem like some of the relationships, I suppose, because of you're in this apocalypse, maybe the sort of relationship building is accelerated because there are times when it feels like they've been there for a while.
yeah, yeah,
Then there are times when it doesn't feel like it's been that long. Um, so
yeah.
yeah,
'Cause
I would have liked a more clear cut timeline for that. One of the special features is actually, let me see what they call it. Special Report Zombie Invasion, and it's the whole thing is a news coverage and a nice little Easter egg for geeks like me. I don't know if you are you a Babylon 5 fan
no,
at
I
all?
never seen it.
The reporter in this special feature is played by an actor named Richard Biggs, who was the doctor on Babylon 5. And then the president, the voice of the president of the United States, is Bruce Boxleitner,
Oh, okay.
star of Babylon 5. But the this special feature goes over 36 hours. It starts with this news reporter played by Richard Biggs making the very first report, and then we're following, and it'll show a map with the outbreaks, and it'll say how many hours it's been, and we see the reporter, you know, eventually his tie is askew, his jacket is off, he's sweating, he's um stuttering and things. We can see him breaking down as all of this stuff goes on. Um until they're taken off the air. He says we're turning this station over to the emergency broadcast system.
Right.
But that only takes a couple of days. Now I don't remember what the last one was that said how many hours it had been.
Well, I remember I think because I had a DVD and I think they showed you like because Andy has some kind of video diary that he
I
keeps or
didn't
something.
I didn't have a chance to watch that one yet.
But that might have been more of a clue because he might because I think he had like a daily thing. So yeah, I remember that. I guess it was because like DVDs were kind of new at the
Mhm.
time, so they needed a lot of extra because there was a lot of extras I remember. Which they don't really do nowadays for the movies. But yeah, there was like a whole other featurette with Andy and because you never hear him speak in the movie.
Well,
So
a little bit over the walkie-talkie when he first
that's right. That's right.
right before he gets 3 lines or something, and then
I'm bit. But I don't, I'll get better. But
yeah,
but then I remember like there was a whole series of his video and stuff on the DVD, but I haven't watched that in a while. But that might have given you a better time. But I think they still want to play a little fast and loose with that, so they can play around with things and not really let um, the timeline. But they're in Milwaukee, so I would figure that if it to it was months that it would get into winter, and so I think it's like summer when they start. So if it's like 6 months later, I would think it would have been pretty damn cold and
yeah.
no,
The only real time frame that I can think of is when they make their plan to take the 2 shuttle buses. They do hold up a sign for Andy to see that says 5 days,
yeah,
and I think that's when he holds up the sign that says hungry.
right.
And then they come up with their plan on how to help him, which goes horribly wrong. Again, human
Hmm.
mistakes, human error.
That was another moment I really love because like you're right. So they're communicating with the signs with Andy, and then after Andy turned to a zombie, they're like, oh yeah, he held up the sign and it's just blood smeared all
Yeah, he's
over.
writing something. Blood smeared.
But
But
yeah, a lot of good moments like that.
it is tragic when he because they send the dog over with food and the
Yeah.
walkie-talkie, and then the zombies get through that little doggy door thing. And yeah, he says he's bit, but he's gonna, oh, I'll take care of it, I'll be fine. And our group of heroes on the roof, basically, they're like, should we tell him? No,
Yeah,
no point in telling him. And then, of course, Lindy Booth's character goes after the dog.
right.
Um, oh, one of the other things, I don't know if this was an actual Easter egg or if it was just me, but when Matt Frewer's character dies and they're right on his face, he dies and then he comes back. He looks exactly like, I believe it's Roger in the
Yeah, no, I did
version.
think that. Yeah, yeah, definitely, because he had like those like lines in his face. And
And
again,
with
like I said,
deep eyes.
I wasn't crazy about the makeup in Dorothy, but then when they needed to, when like the two main characters turn, then the makeup was great. But I'm sure they were saving money on you have dozens and dozens of zombies throughout the mall, and you can't, put all the makeup on everybody. But
Yeah.
then, yeah, those two, when the other SWAT team guy, he turns and he looked really cool. And then
Yeah.
the other the pilot, he turns and you see him in the elevator
Mhm.
with his head like this. So yeah, then they did a good job, but they I guess they couldn't I guess they couldn't afford to do it for everybody.
Oh, and we've got, Ken Foray, one of the stars
Yeah,
of the original, has a little cameo in this one. And it says the famous line, when there's no more room in hell,
I
the
love
dead
that.
shall walk
Yeah.
the earth. Um, yeah, I love there are a lot, even though the main storyline isn't a beat for beat copy. Again, it's just basically people in a mall. There are a lot of little homages, I think.
Yeah,
To
they had the cameos and stuff, and they kind of really when they could, include stuff from the original. But like I said, it really I think they would consider more like a reimagining. So it wasn't like a full on remake. It was
right,
just it's like and in a way, since they which I think that George Romero didn't like the remake, because they did take out the social commentary part
right.
of consumers and all that, and then they kind of reimagined it as more of an action movie. And I think that's what Romero said. It was like a video game, you know, which it is. It does seem a
Right.
lot
Well,
like
there's
a video
literally a part where they're pointing out celebrity lookalikes and shooting them.
game.
Very
Gillette.
video game.
Yeah. So yeah, it felt like very much like that scene. when they're dragging the other guy backwards, and he's got the two guns, and he's
Yeah.
just shooting everybody that's coming by. So yeah, it felt very much like a video game. But since they took the social commentary out, which is about consumerism, and that's really even the reason why they're in a mall. When you take that out, you don't even need to be in a mall. They
Well,
could have done that movie without the mall. Uh, but it's Dawn of the Dead, so that's kind of like the centerpiece of the whole thing is the mall. And which is cool that when I went to StokerCon a couple of weeks ago, it was in Pittsburgh,
yeah.
where they filmed Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead. So I got to be in the mall in Monroeville, Pennsylvania, and there's a museum there, um, to all of Romero's movies and stuff. So it was really cool. So they had like props and stuff, and they have like a mannequin of the dude who's from the original, who's in the elevator looking like this, and so that was really cool to be in the mall. Uh, so that's what got me thinking too about zombies. So I started watching all the zombie movies when I got home from StokerCon.
Somebody, maybe two or three people, posted a picture from the mall while they were at StokerCon that had
Hmm.
like eight or nine or 10 people, authors and things doing like the zombie shuffle
Oh,
down
in
the
the
hall.
mall.
What's that?
Oh, in the mall they were.
Yeah.
I didn't think to do that.
I don't remember who posted it or who's in the picture, but it's like eight or 10 authors, someone to
I
snap.
think everybody went down to the mall. We went to the mall and we went to the museum. It was very cool. We bought some merch, and there's a bust of George Romero on the first floor. Um, but then we went to the cemetery from Night of the Living Dead, from the opening of Night of the Living Dead, and we stood right by where they filmed the beginning of the movie with it behind when he goes, "We're going to get you, Barbara," and we stood around there. So that was cool too. So we probably the two most famous. I the Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Living Dead as locations. I don't think the farmhouse is even necessarily in Pittsburgh. I don't even think that was in the area. That would have been cool to if that farmhouse was still around.
Oh yeah. I One of these days I'm going to make it to one of those cons. Stoker Con or Killer Con or Author Con now.
Yeah, with
Um,
two Orthicons now. So that one in St. Louis. I'll be at the one in Virginia in April.
I think that's the one, or one of the Author Cons is uh the one that I really want to go to, since it was Scares the Care.
Mm-hmm.
That was my dream con to get to, but now it's changed and we've got Author Con.
Oh, Orthicon was great. I went this April or whenever it was, and it was really fun. It's really a cool convention, and it's just books. So it's not you don't have like the celebrities there and stuff. It's just authors, and it's just books, and people are buying insane amount of books. People will wheeling around like shopping carts just filled with books. So it's really great
That'll
for
be me.
authors. It's gonna sell tons of books, and you're gonna yeah you need to come with like a shopping cart or something because people come out with tons of books.
We have close to me, there's twice a year we have a convention called Cinema Wasteland, and it's movies.
Hmm.
Very rarely they'll have an author there, and usually it's an independent author, someone relatively local. Although the last one I went to, Grindhouse Press, was there, and but they are from Ohio. Jack
Okay.
Ketchum was there one year.
Oh, okay.
Got to meet Jack Ketchum, but mainly it's movie stuff. I still like to go. I can't wait for the one in October because they're doing a sleepaway camp reunion.
Oh.
Uh, I'm excited for that, but I there isn't a book one that's that close by. We had there was one down in Columbus a while ago that I got to go to a couple of times. Can't remember what it was. Context,
Oh.
maybe. Um, I found out about it the year after Brian Keene was there.
Oh,
but Tim Wagner's been there. Uh,
okay. Yeah, he's in Ohio.
yeah, yeah, there were quite a few of the local Ohio authors made
There's
it
a
there,
lot of
and then
a
it's
lot of them
just
from Ohio. Lucy
um,
Snyder's in Ohio.
and
Yeah,
then
'cause when we went to, where did I go? Imaginarium, which
mhm.
in Kentucky. So we drove through Pennsylvania and then we went to Ohio. We stayed in Ohio overnight. But I always wanted to go to Jungle Gyms in Cincinnati. I think in Cincinnati.
Mhm.
I always heard there's like I think Cincinnati had like this like alternative radio station that I used to listen to a lot, and they used to always advertise jungle gyms. And it was like talking about like you had all these like crazy like you can get all this game meat, like you could get giraffe or something, and all this and that. Although when I went to jungle gyms, it was like only like one little case of that, so I had a totally different idea of what jungle gyms was going to be. But that was like my big thing about going to Ohio.
Well, I'm up near Cleveland. I don't get down to the Cincinnati area very often, but I did go years and years and years and years ago. I went for this big tennis thing that was there, and I swear we stayed. There was like a jungle gym. It was like the Jungle Gym Motel or something.
Oh, really?
I swear that's what it was called, where we stayed
It's
for
that
the.
building in Cincinnati that was like the inspiration for the Justice League Hall of Fame, the Hall of
Oh,
Justice, Super Friends, and I was like, what? It really does look like, so I was like, that was cool. We had to drive by that. So that's my only experience with Ohio, and then WKRP. So that's
all right. Is there anything else you want to say about Dawn of the Dead 2004? Anything we didn't cover?
I don't know. I mean, I think so. I mean, like I said, it's a pretty simple movie. It's just very action oriented. So it was just like, like I said, it starts off and it's just, action scene after action scene. So, um, yeah, I think and then we didn't talk about, but it is that movie Army of the Dead, what they say is kind of like a spiritual sequel, which Zack Snyder did. I think it was just a Netflix,
Right.
and it is similar. 'Cause I didn't realize it. There's another like kind of action zombie film where what is it? I think Las Vegas is like closed off,
Hmm.
so they have to pull off a heist in the middle of the zombie infested Las Vegas with Dave Bautista is in it, which wasn't a bad movie. And I think there was supposed to be another sequel to that. Because I was surprised because this Dawn of the Dead remake did really well at the box office, so I was surprised they didn't do like another like a sequel to it.
There is, I think it's a Day of the Dead sequel that has Ving Rhames in it,
Oh, really?
but I don't think anybody that had anything to do with this movie had anything to do with that one. It's, I think, direct to video, very low budget. I've seen it. It was not good. And I think Ving Rhames is supposed to be playing
The same
the
character?
brother of the character. No, I think it's supposed to be his brother.
Oh, the brother that he's looking
I
for?
could be wrong. I swear he's like an army captain
Yeah,
in the
well, that's
thing.
interesting.
It's been
Yeah,
ages since I've seen it, so I don't remember any of the details.
but
But
all these movies like were connected in some way. So, and then there was a I think in 1990 there's a remake of Night of the Living Dead. Um, like we said, Return of the Living Dead is also kind of connected to Night of the Living Dead, and then you have the remake. So all of these zombie movies are kind of have that connection. And then there were a lot of other that there was like Land of the Dead, and there was Diary. Then and that by the end they were just like churning them out.
yeah,
You know, so there's a lot of them I probably haven't even heard of that were like just direct to DVD or direct to streaming now.
what do you think of the end credits stuff that happens in this?
Yeah, I like that because like it really forces you now. You have to watch the whole thing. You have to watch the whole credits because it's really part of the movie.
Yeah,
It's kind of weird the way they end it. They kind of just end it as they're get on the boat and they're leaving the dock, and the other guy, the Michael,
Hmm.
he shoots him, and then that's supposedly the end. But it's not, then they get on the boat, and I love that when they find, the found footage of again, Ty Burrell's character. And I love that when he's like, he's got the girl, I run a tight ship. That's a great line. And and then but there are great moments in that part because then they find the other boat and they open up a cooler and there's a zombie in it
Yep.
and it's alive, or undead, and then they find an island and then they get off and then it's kind of unclear. But that dude, they make sure like the dog is survived because the dog just takes off and
Yeah.
we should follow his adventures at some point. I did appreciate that they were protective of the dog and they was like, none of the zombies wanted to, they had no
Right.
interest in him. So all the dogs in this world are safe.
So my kind of world. So if you had to make a call, do they survive? Are they dead at the end of the movie?
I mean, that's probably like an executive decision. It was like we're gonna wait to see what the box office is in case there's
Yeah.
a sequel, right? It looked pretty bad to me. Because it's a boat too, so you couldn't really jump on the boat and just take off, you know.
Yeah.
It's if Ving Rhames is still alive, right? At that point.
Yeah, it's Ving Rhames, Sarah Polley, Lindy Booth, and the young
Oh,
security guard.
yeah, because again, it's like what were they really thinking? They were just gonna go to an island and the island was gonna be uninhabited and they would just so there was a really bad plan. I wouldn't have just docked. I would just kind of your best bet was probably to live on the boat and try to then jump onto land and try to get supplies and then go back on the boat, right?
Yeah.
Then you would need a bigger boat, really. But your best bet would be to and kind of live out as far away from land as possible. But they kind of, they did kind of put themselves in a corner because you made the zombies so kind of they're fast and they're powerful too.
Yeah.
Remember, like the husband in the beginning, he's punching like the windshield and he's going through the windshield. He's chasing after the car and he's pretty much keeping up with it. So it would be really very difficult to survive in that type of environment. So they kind of gave themselves a big problem there because that's why like it's different when they're in the mall. The mall is already secure and it was already everything was locked down. So when they get in there, it's like it's a safe haven already, and they didn't really even have to clean it up because there weren't anybody in there because it would just be really difficult for them to do anything unless they had some place where they were secure because they really wouldn't be able to fight these things
Yeah.
and as I said there were thousands of them so it would be really really impossible to kind of survive in that world. So I would think they were pretty much toast, at that point, But you know, I remember there was that scene in The Walking Dead we all thought Glenn was dead,
Hmm.
right? And then he wasn't dead. So who knows? Like they hide under some bodies or something, and then they survive. So that's possible. I mean, they can figure out some way of making them survive.
Well, yeah, of course. Again, it always comes down to money. If we can make a buck,
And I wonder if it
they
was
weren't where you
maybe
thought they were.
Romero didn't want them to do him because I said he didn't like it. Um, and they got the rights from him, so maybe he put the kibosh on that. But it was a huge financial hit.
Yeah. I like I said, I saw it in the theater. I loved it.
Yeah, so it's not like Hollywood's not like wanting to always capitalize on stuff like that.
Yeah.
They definitely could have done more of them. Um, and if you had a Bing Rames, he's a great like leading man for a zombie apocalypse movie.
Yeah.
Bing Rames with a shotgun. That you'd watch that. So that was always the problem with the earlier Romero movies too, because they didn't have like big stars in them. So to continue them we were kind of with these like no name characters. So it wasn't like the characters were well known. So it was like if you did like the next movie, it wasn't like, oh, you really thought of like this the continuation of it with this character or that character. They didn't have characters like, Rick or Glenn and stuff like that. So, I know when people talk about, oh, well, let's do something with like in the Night of the Living Dead world, we can write like, you can do an anthology, or it would be hard because you don't have the characters to continue it, and then it would just be a generic zombie apocalypse world, and it's like, what makes this Night of the Living Dead?
Right.
But if you had Ving Rhames, then you could do a whole series of movies with Ving Rhames as your Rick character and leading a band of survivors through the zombie apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do like this sort of age that we're living in where you can have these streaming shows that are 8 or 10 episodes, and they're not necessarily worried about having another season. They're telling a story that's longer than a movie, and we may or may not get more, or we just have this nice 8 or 10 episode contained story.
And I wonder if they remember I talked about that, because that would be a good, just do the Dawn of the Dead remake as a TV series,
Mhm.
and you could do that as a really cool 10 episode series, right? Ving Rhames is still around, and you can just do that, like I said, expand on the characters, and then you can certainly do new seasons then when they get in the boat, and then
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I'm sure somebody's doing something in like the Romero IP, TV series. I'm really surprised they haven't done, unless it's because the Walking Dead. No, they don't care about that. I mean, they would do it.
Yeah.
I'm surprised, but yeah, I'm surprised that they haven't done something like that, or if it's not already in the works.
Hmm. All right. Well, is there anything you want to promote before we say goodbye?
Well, I don't have, my Kickstarter ended, so, but you can still get, you can still pledge late to the Dead Detective Society Kickstarter. So if you go to monstrousbooks.com, there, the first link will take you to the pre-order store, so you can still get that book. And as I said before, I'm hoping to get them out early, so they should be available at least for Christmas. So that's
All
really
right.
a thing that I can talk about. And Shakespeare Unleashed is coming out next month, and you can pre-order that on Amazon, the ebook and the hardcover and all that.
And where, if you care to share, where can people find you online?
Yeah, go to montrousbooks.com, and there's links to my Twitter account, Facebook, and Instagram and all that. Although I don't know how long Twitter is gonna last. Everyone's talking like gonna end today.
Craziness. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here. If you'll just stick around for a moment after I stop the recording. But thank you again. Thank you, folks, for watching. I will have links for some of James' stuff down in the description below. And oh, it's been a while since I've done one of these. I don't remember how I used to end it. So I will just once again say thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Until next time, read more books.
Thank you.
And